So you're going to make coils out of your clay, and we're going to be pressing them inside the bowl and around the edges and smoothing out the inside. So when we're done, we're going to remove this from here, and you're going to see all the coils on the outer part of the bowl. So when you first get clay and you're making coils, that tends to be the hardest part. Just kind of cut that down in the center. And what you'll want to do is begin by sort of squeezing the clay into a much larger coil. All right? And your coils won't need to be very large. I would say maybe a little larger than the size of a pencil. So as you go, you could just keep kind of pulling that apart. And notice I'm turning this as I'm squeezing it. The whole point is to get this almost as close to the size of the coil that you want as possible. So you wouldn't want to start with a chunk like this and start rolling. That's not going to help you much. So I've got this. I want it to be roughly this size, maybe a little bit larger. So at this point, you're going to have your hands in the center, and you're going to roll back and forth and gradually go outward and spread your fingers. So you kind of have this movement where you're going outward. So I'm going to roll it, go outward, come back into the center. And you'll notice this is starting to get a little longer. All right. If at any point part of yours starts to get a little flat, then you can always roll it up and sort of pat it down. But once we get this length, you want to start focusing on the areas that are a little thicker, and you want to try to keep it as even as possible. The same thickness throughout the whole coil. Again, this is starting to get a little flat, so I'm going to roll it up, kind of pat it down. And your coils will probably get pretty long, so they'll move off of the board, and that's fine. Just kind of be careful with them. All right, so now I'm left with this longer coil. So what we want to do is, you'll notice the bottom is nice and flat and round. We actually want to curve our coil in a little spiral so that we can put it into the bottom. So what I'm going to do is take this and start sort of curving it around and rolling it. Now, if your clay is a little dry, with it being the winter, that happens a little bit more. If it starts to sort of crack all along where you're curving it, smooth it out as you go. So I can kind of smooth any of those cracks as I go. And you want a nice tight coil. And you want to roll until you get the size of the inside. Now, if you're doing this and you didn't make a long enough coil, let's say it stops here and I need it to be larger, roll another coil and you can actually attach it on here. So for example, I've got that pretty good, about the size of the inside. So at this point, what you're going to do is, you could take your finger or you could take one of the tools, but you're going to start smearing in this whole side. You're smearing it together. You don't want to press too hard because you don't want to completely flatten out the bottom. So if you notice, it did flatten it out a little bit, but that's going to happen. That's just an expectation. So once that's completely smooth, we'll put it into the bottom, and we'll just kind of leave it in there for now. Set it off the side. So now we're going to go back to rolling another coil. So again, we're going to squeeze this. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. Just a reminder, rolling coils is actually a lot more frustrating than you would think. A lot of times people don't squeeze this enough, and they start out with a larger piece of clay, and that actually makes it harder. So again, squeeze it until you have it as close to the smaller amount or smaller coil as possible. So we can even break that apart. So start in the middle, roll outward. Focus on the thicker parts, and if it starts to flatten out, fix it. So we're going to bring that bowl back over. And then what we're going to do is, I would say for that first time around, you may just want to wrap it around. And I'll show you what I mean by that when I say first time around. So you're going to keep that there, and then you're just going to smooth that in. And again, you can use your finger or you can use a tool to do it. All right, make sure that's nice and smooth before we move on. So that whole thing should be nice and smooth. Now, it would be really easy for us just to keep going around and around and around, but that wouldn't be very interesting for our bowl. So what we want to do is actually create at least 3 different designs on the outside. So for example, I could do another spiral, some smaller spirals, and then I could put them in here, just like that. And then I'd go through, same thing I did before, flatten these out. And again, the entire inside of your bowl needs to be smoothed out. So that's just one design. I'm going to show you another one real quick. So now, so far we've got that one design here, the little spiral designs. You can do another one called, there's really no technical name for it. I think it looks like fence posts. You can kind of line these up. All right. And then we can add these right here. And then smooth them in. So remember, they need to be smoothed together and then down onto this bottom part here. We've got the spirals we did the fence posts here. You can also do little buttons. They're literally just little rolled up balls of clay. So you've got a button here. You could place these all around. Right, so again, keeping the entire inside nice and smooth. You could do other different designs. I mean, really anything that you could think of will work. So you can place that one here. Now when you're done, since we've got all these kind of odd edges up here, you can actually come around with one final coil and go over top of all of these. Let's say if I had the rest kind of going around here, you could keep this going all the way around. But this way, kind of have a nice top to it. Finish smoothing it all in. You don't want to have any holes. The goal for this is if you want to eat a bowl of cereal out of this once it's completely done, you should be able to. There shouldn't be any liquid that can escape. So normally you'd go all the way around and you'd be done. When you're finished, we'll usually give this a little time to dry, but just for the sake of today, I'm going to break this so you can see what it'll look like. But when you're done, you'll have all this around here that is completely finished. Not too bad, all right? But like I said, we'll keep your bowls in the styrofoam ones. Shouldn't take too long. The hardest part is going to be actually creating the coils themselves. It's very frustrating.